Hey everybody, Ezra here. It's August 7th and you're watching Battleground. It's what we do every day at 12 noon Eastern Time. Yesterday, my friends Sheila Gunn-Reid out west and Mocha Bazirgan here in Toronto held the floor for an hour. Mocha's quite a character with quite a head of hair, don't you think? Some people say he looks like Geddy Lee. Some people say he looks like Slash from Guns N' Roses. Some people even say a young Howard Stern. I think he's great, and he's doing a great job. I like to sit in this chair every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, because there's so many things to talk about, and I don't have time to do them all in my paywalled show, which is nightly at 8 p.m. I like to talk about little things I find on social media. For example, I saw a video tweeted by my friend Avi Yamini down in Australia. Now, Australia is geographically a fairly large country, but it's as sparse as Canada. Most of it is just the outback, as they say. It's very empty. But it has a few very large international class cities, Sydney obviously being the most amazing. Melbourne is a lovely place, the size of Toronto. It's a very major city. Melbourne is in the Australian state called Victoria. And they've had an interesting, they quarantined people who were coming in from overseas. They quarantined them in a few hotels, excuse me. And they were guarded by security, but not by real security, not by police or even health officials, just some people who filled out some like online ad for security guards wanted, minimum wage, no experience necessary really. And so they had just these mall cops, and wouldn't you know it, everyone being bored and locked in their hotels, and hotels being hotels, quarantine hotel sex scandal linked to coronavirus outbreak in Melbourne. Let me read a little bit of this story. Can you pump up the font size here? Australian officials have launched a judicial inquiry amid allegations a fresh coronavirus outbreak in the state of Victoria was sparked by some contracted workers not following protocols at a hotel used to quarantine international arrivals, including reportedly having sex with people under lockdown. Hang on, so you're saying that that wasn't following best practices? Are you saying that they didn't follow the proper protocols? So having sex with people in quarantine and then going into another room and having sex with them and then going, you're saying that wasn't part of the plan? So it started to spread. Now, Australia and even the state of Victoria have not been overwhelmed by the virus at all. In fact, Australia has been almost untouched by the virus. They probably have more cases of typhoid than they do of this virus. But the other day, 11 people passed away, all of them in seniors' homes. So, I mean, this is really the seniors' home virus. It's not even a senior citizens virus. If you are over 80, you're probably going to be fine, as long as you don't let your family send you to one of these institutionalized, low care, low ventilation, don't give a damn type places. The 11 people who passed away the other day were all in seniors' homes. But Victoria, the state in which Melbourne, the wonderful city, is located, is run by a bizarre man named, if I'm remembering correctly, is it Dan Andrews? Is that his name? I've just only heard of him now. He's really unremarkable, other than he just loves China. Now, I like China too. I had Chinese food for dinner last night. I've been to China. I've tried to learn Chinese in university. It didn't work very well. I find it very hard to get the pronunciations and to remember the script. I like many things about China, but the one thing I hate is their communist government. Everything else I like about China. It's like the Soviet Union. You could love the Russian people and Russian history and be interested in the Russian language and Russian culture, but hate the Soviet Union. And that's how I feel about China. And that's why it irks me so much that Justin Trudeau said the one thing he admires about China is not its food, language, culture, music, architecture, history, art, scholarship, industriousness. He didn't mention any of those. He said it's basic dictatorship. So Dan Andrews, the premier of the Australian state of Victoria. That's him right there. Not only does he love China like Trudeau, but he actually signed on to China's empire plan called Belt and Road Initiative. It's a very strange word, but China wants to basically create a new economic and political empire around the world called the Belt and Road Initiative. It's basically signing on to Chinese domination in industry, technology, resources, commerce. That's the closest analogy I can think of, like an empire. And so even though Australia itself is reviling and recoiling from China, China did some extremely bad things to Australia during this pandemic. This bizarre little socialist named Dan Andrews actually signed on to the Belt and Road scheme. Look at this. Victoria's Daniel Andrews slammed over China deal. Belt and Road scheme explained. Schemed is exactly right. So imagine that. You're not the foreign minister of Australia. You're not the prime minister. You really don't represent, it's not your turf. You're not the foreign affairs guy. You run Melbourne and other parts in Victoria. Do your job. He's signing these deals with Chinese diplomats, contrary to it would be like if a mayor, it'd be like if crazy John Tory were to sign some treaty with China. Frankly, Justin Trudeau would probably want to be there. But imagine doing that in defiance of Trudeau. It's so crazy. So he loves the authoritarian regimes. He is truly a Manchurian candidate. Anyways, this Dan Andrews, his answer to 11, he's the one who caused the outbreak with this weird hospital sex scheme thing. I'm not claiming that Dan Andrews instructed the sex to happen, but it was his goofy plan, and he hired the people off the streets, and I don't know, just a mess. So he's gone full Tiananmen Square. I did a show about this the other night. They've literally deployed the police. Of course they deployed the police. They deployed the Australian military, and why the federal government in Australia went along with this, I do not know. They're patrolling the streets in Melbourne, and I've read the rules. You're allowed to be out of your house for 1 hour a day, max. You can't go further than 5 kilometers from your house for exercise. Almost every single thing is shut down. You're not allowed to have a wedding. You just can't get married, sorry. So many crazy rules. You need papers to go out. Seriously, you need papers. I was joking with Justin, our producer, the other day. I remember all those World War II movies where the Gestapo would find someone and say, "Eier Papieren," show your papers. That's a totalitarian thing. That's a Nazi thing. That's a Soviet thing. Police don't walk up to you on the street and say, "Show your papers. Where are your papers?" That's just not how we live. But I guess that's how they live in Melbourne now. So enough preamble. Let me show you this shocking video that I saw this morning when I woke up from Melbourne. Take a look.
She's in pain. She says she's in
I'm
pain.
dealing with you now. I need to confirm your identification.
I don't have my ID.
Well, then where is it?
It's in my mom's car.
You don't have a wallet here?
No, I
Where's
don't
your
have.
mom's car?
It's close by.
No. You need to talk to me, okay? The reason we're arresting your mum and we're going to arrest you is because we can't confirm.
I was walking by.
No.
I was walking by.
Then how come she's told you that you're her daughter?
Yeah, she's my mom. I know.
Okay. If you're serious, you need to talk to me. Where's your ID? Because you're going to be arrested if
It's
I
in my
can't.
mom's car. It's there.
It's where? Over here. Is it walking distance away?
I don't know. Maybe yes.
You need to take this seriously because you won't be arrested if I can confirm your ID. Do you hear me? You won't be arrested if I can confirm your ID. Tell me how
I'm not doing anything wrong.
Yes, you are doing something wrong. You're out in contravention of the COVID restrictions, alright?
But I'm walking.
Okay, alright.
It's allowed.
I still need to confirm your ID and you're going to be
What
under
for?
arrest.
I'm not breaking the law.
No, I believe you are, so I need to confirm your ID. How am I going to do that? No, you
Mama,
tell me.
stop.
You're the one being a smart ass about this.
I find that very infuriating. You know, I have a lot of friends who came over from the former Soviet Union in 1979 when there was a brief moment of détente when Jimmy Carter and I think it was Leonid Brezhnev sort of warmed things up a little bit. And there were thousands of Russians, mainly Jews, who were dissidents or democracy activists, who came over during that brief window of time. I was a student. I was, in grade school in Calgary, and we had a little tranche of Russians who arrived in Calgary, Alberta. And they joined our school. It was sort of neat, Alex Chulsky and others. Then, of course, when Reagan was elected, the Soviet Union locked down again. But 10 years later, when the Berlin Wall came down, there was another wave of people in the former Soviet Union getting out. So I got to know, over my life, a little bit when I was a child, but kids don't really know a lot of things. But as a grown-up, talking to people who left the former Soviet Union for the West, to hear how it was in daily life, the living in a totalitarian regime. There was one story, I think I might have shared this with you before, by a friend of mine. I won't use his last name, but his first name is Eugene or Yevgeny. And he told me this story, and I just told this to Justin this morning, so he has to hear it again. But so my friend Eugene, that's how he calls himself in English, it's Yevgeny, in Zhenya, that's how they call it in Russian. So Eugene comes over, and he goes to the University of Calgary. And the University of Calgary is a large campus, and there's lots of sidewalks, and there's lots of grassy lawns. And in the spring and summer, everyone sits on the lawn and has lunch or plays guitar or just hangs out or even a little bit of sunbathing. And people walk on the lawn. They walk on the sidewalks, but the sidewalks have like an intersection at right angles, right? But no one just like goes straight like 90-degree angle. They just walk on the grass. You're allowed to do it. It's not like protected grass. The grass is there to be enjoyed, and the students do. So anyways, I explained that because, so Eugene was at U of C. He's walking with his friend. This is a story he told me. And he's walking, and so they're in an intersection, the sidewalk. His friends all, make a shortcut on the grass, and he, like a robot, goes walk, 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 walk. Okay, 90-degree turn, walk, walk, walk. Like he's being really weird about it. And they're all saying, Eugene, what are you doing? Why are you being so weird? Why are you walking? Why aren't you just walking on the grass here like we are all? Why are you walking like some robot or like a Pac-Man? Beep, 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 beep. Okay, 90-degree turn, beep, beep, beep. Why are you doing that? Why are you not just being normal? And he told me this 15 years ago, he said, he thought, yeah, what am I doing? And the answer was, back in the Soviet Union, if you dared to walk on the grass, some little KGB agent, some little security guard, some little bureaucrat or cop would come up to you, stop you, and you'd bloody well better stop, demand to see your papers, and write you up. And that would be entered in your file somewhere. To what use, I don't know. But everyone had a file, a security file, and that would be antisocial behavior, and it would be a mark against you. And so he had been conditioned, growing up in the former Soviet Union, to living like a prisoner. Even when you're out in the grass in the fresh air and sunshine and the lawn, don't walk on the lawn, because some busybody, probably not a cop, probably some local equivalent to a bouncer, and he in that moment realized that he had, although he had left the Soviet Union and was now in Canada, a free man, he was still psychologically trapped and living like a prisoner. So afraid was he to walk on the grass. He told me that was the moment where he said, I'm going to walk on the grass now. I'm free. And one more thing, this just makes me, and I was thinking about that, and Eugene's Jewish, and it makes me think of the story of the Bible, of the Israelites being let out or fleeing from Egypt and wandering for 40 years in the desert before they are allowed to go to the promised land. Why? why would they have to wait 40 years? They wandered, like they didn't make a beeline from Egypt to the land of Canaan. And the Jewish explanation, which is probably accepted by Christian scholars as well, is that the idea was so that the slave generation died out. And what I mean by that is if you grew up as a slave in Egypt, you thought like a slave. And even though you were out of your prison cell, you probably still acted like a slave or thought like a slave. And the theory was, let that slave generation die out and let a new generation enter the Holy Land. And in fact, Moses himself, as you know in the book, did not enter the Holy Land. And I think that's what happens when you have people let out of prison. And I think a lot of people who fled the Soviet Union but who grew up in it still retain that fear in their lives. Fear of authority. Not respect for authority, it's different. Fear of authority. But my final point is that in the story that Eugene told me, he would be left alone if he just stood on the sidewalk. It's only if he would walk onto the lawn that he would be asked for his papers. So his mental prison that he lived under was enough to protect him from whimsical humiliations from the law. Compare that to what you just saw in Melbourne, Australia. She wasn't walking on the lawn. She wasn't breaking any law. She wasn't crowding in a massive group. She wasn't doing anything wrong. She was literally outside. They didn't even say she was doing anything wrong. They demanded her papers. Was it 3 cops holding down the mum? I think I saw 3 cops holding down the mum. And another cop, what was that, 3, 4 cops altogether? Kneeling, 3 cops on the mum, kneeling on her. Reminds me of George Floyd a little bit. I don't have my ID. So that's the crime. You don't have your ID. How's that a crime? Did you cough in someone's face? Was there a massive group of you? It's a gal and her mum, possibly in the same household, I don't know. So where's the crime? In the Soviet Union, for Eugene to get in trouble, he'd have to walk on the grass. There was no crime here. It was just, I see people, I demand to see a piece of paper as if that is dispositive of whether or not they're a health risk. And I'm going to kneel on their neck, and you saw those bruises because where's your wallet? Well, where's your card? Where's your wallet? And this is in the name of public health. Unbelievable. There's some super chats coming in. I see some super chats. Looks like they're from Australia, if I'm reading that correctly. Are you sending to me on WhatsApp? Okay, great. I just got to open up my WhatsApp here. I sometimes miss the super chats as we go, so Justin sends them over here. Let's take a look here. I'll just go chronologically of when I got them. Wanda Granada, $10. First Nations have been protecting the land for thousands of years. I support First Nations. I also criticize First Nations. How can those two things both be true? Because a First Nation, at least in its manifestation of an Indian band, which is the legal term under the Indian Act, is a political entity. So a chief is like a mayor. To me, that's the analogy. There's some good mayors, there's some bad mayors. There's some honest mayors and some crooked mayors. There's some economic development focused mayors, and then there's grievance oriented mayors, just like in big cities. And especially when I was at Sun News, when I did a lot more work on Aboriginal issues myself, I sort of had a rule of thumb. Whenever I criticized a corrupt chief like Teresa Spence of Attawapiskat, I would try and show, well, look, she's an anomaly. There's great chiefs out there too, like my favorite chief, Clarence Louis of the Osoyoos Band. I'd like to get back out and do more of that. Arkean Bexley went out to Blue River, BC, and met with grassroots local Indian band members who wanted the pipeline and who were frustrated by professional protesters against it. But I'd like to do more First Nations Aboriginal work. Muzzle flash, $5, Australian. Dan Andrews is a textbook example of what Vladimir Lenin meant when he spoke of the useful idiots from the West. You might be giving Dan Andrews too much credit. I don't think he's a useful idiot of the West. I think he's a collaborator with China. I mean, that's just the plain language he is. And he loves that authoritarian power he's been given. Kane Enmark, $5. Is there any updates with 3 Muslims hitting the 2 gay guys in Calgary here? Kian Bexley's working on an update right now. Hopefully we'll have that video up today. Apple Mania Gaming, $15 Australian, I think. Thanks for talking about the absolute state of Victoria. 8 p.m. to 5 a.m. curfew. You need a pass for work. Police don't need a warrant to enter your home to check if you're social distancing. That's incredible. We interviewed our friend Avi Yamini a couple nights ago. He lives in Melbourne, and he looked like a prisoner. He looked like I was talking to a prisoner. I didn't know they didn't need a warrant to enter your house, and that's crazy too. This cannot stand. You know, let me tell you one more anecdote, and again, I shared this with Justin this morning, so you have to hear it a second time, Justin. As you may know, my old friend Tommy Robinson in the UK, he was in prison, in solitary confinement in Belmarsh, which is a very high security prison in London. So I visited him there, I think 3 times or something. And you're buzzed through, and there's a metal detector. They check in your mouth. They have dogs sniff you, like they really, really do a lot of checking. Like they make you open your mouth and they sort of look inside your mouth. You had to take off your watch, your belt, your shoes, obviously. You weren't even allowed a piece of paper. Oddly enough, you were allowed to bring money in, but not even a pencil or a paper. Anyways, you get in and you go through other checks, and there's dogs and very high. It was really the Guantanamo Bay of the UK. That's where they keep their terrorists. And you make your way in, and Tommy was in, I think they call it the suites. It's like a prisoner. It's like a prison for one person. This whole wing of the prison where there's no contact between prisoners and other prisoners. Guards are only allowed to deal with Tommy 2 at a time. Very, very extreme prison. It's like where you would keep Hannibal Lecter. And I went all the way in, and I would meet with Tommy, and I would come all the way out. There's a lot of waiting involved. And I mean, look at me. I'm not built for prison. This was all very alien to me. I was waiting in the holding area with the general visiting population before I was sent to Tommy's special wing. And in some ways, the prison felt like any other sort of institution with lots of people in it, like a high school. There was some artwork in some parts of it. There was some, things were a little rusty or worn out here. There are some bars, obviously, and thick glass. It reminded me a little bit of what a high school was like. The thing that I found most unsettling was not the bars, not the dogs, not the searches, not the architecture, but the feeling of total helplessness at the whim of the guards. If a guard likes you, he'll be nice enough to you. But if a guard doesn't like you for any reason or for no reason, he can make your life miserable, physically and psychologically. Because the chief feeling I had, and I'm saying this only as someone who was in there for a few hours, imagine being in there for weeks or years, was that you've been reduced from an adult, a man, who has some powers and some strengths and some protections and some rights, and you're making your own choices. You're being reduced to less than a child. I mean, a child is at the mercy of his parents who love him, like an infant. And thank God they love him and would do anything to protect him. But you are reduced to a legal child, really. You don't have the rights of an adult in there. And you're at the complete whim of this correctional officer, this guard. They might like you or hate you. They might have some grudge against you. They might just be having a bad day. They might be politically opposed to you. Who knows what they're motivated? They might be bribed. The total helplessness, being subject and submissive to that power. And I've obviously never done jail time myself as a prisoner. But just in my hours in the prison, that was the greatest fear I think I would have if I were a prisoner. Not the hard, bad food, not even the other prisoners so much. Just, I am completely like a little insect in the palm of these 100 guards, whoever. That's terrifying. And I felt a little bit of that whimsical, capriciousness from some of them, frankly, myself. But at least in a prison, you had a trial before you were sentenced and convicted and sentenced. What happens when you put 7 million people in Melbourne in a childlike position? Melbourne has about 6 million souls, about 7 million in the whole state of Victoria. So they didn't do anything wrong. They didn't have a trial. They didn't have a lawyer. They didn't have an appeal. No one is clear on the rules. You saw that. What did I do wrong? Oh, you're breaking the COVID rules. Which ones? I just say you're breaking them. And the fact that you don't have a piece of paper on you, I'm just saying that you're breaking the rules, and now I'm going to have 3 people kneel on you, George Floyd style, and I'm going to bruise you. What? That's not a thing. Searches of homes without warrants? Like I say, you're in a prison cell. Like you're at home, you close your door, you lock your door, a man's home is his castle. You're in prison, you close your jail cell, well, a warden and a guard can come right in if he wants. That's invasive. That you don't have the privacy right, you don't have the property right. You've just turned 6 million people in Melbourne into prisoners where a health officer, a cop, a bylaw officer, a soldier can just enter your house without warrant if that super chat is right. You've just turned 6-7 million people into prisoners. Like I mentioned the other day, Tommy Robinson had 1 hour a day for exercise. So that's the same in Melbourne. You're not allowed to have visitors in Melbourne. Tommy Robinson had visitors in Belmarsh once every week or so. So you've just turned 6 or 7 million people into prisoners with actually fewer rights than prisoners. The police state is more authoritarian than that described to me by my friend Eugene when he was in the former Soviet Union. At least if you minded your own business, you wouldn't be accosted. Here, this lady and her daughter were minding their own business. 4 cops come and kneel on her and pin her down like that. You're going to see prison riots. And by prison riots, I mean the prison of Melbourne. You're going to see riots. You think people are going to stand for this for long? It's easy to pick on a mother and a daughter when you're 4 big cops. You're very, very brave, aren't you? There are parts of Melbourne that are a little bit less compliant. I wonder if the police will simply not try and police those more excitable parts of Melbourne, very multicultural city. Lots of gangs, huge gang problem in Melbourne. Maybe they're being really butch when they see a mother and daughter on the street in a way they wouldn't be if they're dealing with some of the various rival gangs in that city. That Dan Andrews, I got a question for you. Do you think for 1 second that he and his family are complying with these prisoner rules? Don't kid yourself. Don't kid yourself. They've been under this martial law, and it really is martial law. They really do have soldiers in the streets. They've been in this martial law for a few days now. It's not going to last. It's not going to last. People can't live that way. Even prisoners need a drop of self-respect and a drop of dignity. Just a little drop of dignity. You have prison riots if you don't get that. If the warden and the guards don't listen to legitimate grievances, you have prison riots. I tell you now, if this insane China-style authoritarian martial law in Melbourne continues, you will have prison riots, the prison being the entire city of Melbourne. I put it to you, that will happen. That will happen. Mad Cow Mark, $20 Australian, Victoria, Australia. Yesterday, deaths were a 58-year-old, 2 in their 70s, 3 in their 80s, and 3 in their 90s, all in nursing homes except the 58-year-old. You must remember that George Soros money is in the 3 main political parties here. Well, it's funny you say that because, as I mentioned the other day, the 11 deaths the other day were all in seniors' homes. This is not a disease that affects the young. in my province, in my country here, you're from Australia, here in Canada, I was studying the numbers in British Columbia. British Columbia is similar in size to the Australian state of Victoria. There's about 6.5 million, 7 people in Victoria. There's just over 5 million people in British Columbia. Both are large, both have one dominant city, Vancouver here, Melbourne there. So I think they're similar, multiracial, you bet. I looked at a study of all the deaths in British Columbia. The youngest was age 47. Yeah, thanks very much. The oldest was 103, 104. Average age was 85. And like, it's over. The pandemic's over, unless you're unlucky enough to be institutionalized in a senior's home, in which case my advice is get the hell out of the senior's home. Just get out of the senior's home. You're literally safer living on the streets, because at least you got fresh air then. I don't think it can last. You're going to see riots. Kurt 123, $20. I think Andrew Bolt from Sky News Australia would make a great interview. Great country, weather people, but most hypocritical government in history. I'd like to follow Andrew Bolt online. I think he's very sensible. Has your gulag got planning permission? £2. It's global, it's coordinated, and it's terrifying. Yeah. You know, can you put that video up again as B-roll and let me talk over it, the Melbourne one, so people can still hear me? I saw this. I was just so upset by it. What, was she a drug dealer? Did she have a gun? Like, that's the kind of thing you see with an armed gang member in an active shooter environment. And the cop was, show me your ID. I just want to see your ID. Papieren, show me your papers. And I thought to myself, that's happening in Australia because it's a disarmed country. I don't think that, and then I thought, well, that would never happen in an armed country like the United States. And I said, no. Depends on the state. Now, that would not happen in New York City because the New York City Police Department would not do this. They have high standards. They govern, they police with the consent of the people. The NYPD would never do that. That's contrary to their code. But, and in fact, I think most police departments in the United States would not engage in that kind of misconduct. I just don't think they would. You know, I'm going to do a monologue soon about the Scottish Police Federation, which has just written a very long letter to its own justice minister saying it does not support policing hate crimes. They have a radical justice minister in Scotland who wants the police to literally be hate finders general, and the Police Federation of Scotland, representing 98% of the cops, says no, we will not do that. That will destroy our bond with the people. Exactly. But I guess in Melbourne they don't have that bond with the people, and if they do, they're certainly doing their best to break it. In Canada, I could see certain police forces doing that. I could see John Tory getting the more political cops in his shop doing that. I could see that happening in Calgary, where their police force is generally out of control in regards to, for example, Arthur Pavlovsky and other pastors. I could absolutely see that in Canada, where a disarmed population. I don't think you'd see that in Texas, mate. I don't think you'd see that in Texas or other states that permit concealed carry permits. I think you've got someone walking down the street and 4 cops say, give us your papers. That's going to end very poorly. But again, the cops wouldn't do that. I've seen different jurisdictions in the United States say we don't want our police to be in the, social distancing. In New York City, they said, we're going to stay busy on the real crimes. We'll let you politicians have your political crimes. Extremely troubling. Mad Cow Mark, $5. Some people are making more money at home than at work. Why would they work? Well, the government in Canada is certainly paying so much in the they call it the CERB, the C-E-R-B, I forget exactly what that stands for, that it's dissuading people from going back to work. Mimi Jovanovic, $5. Got your book, wanted to say thank you. Well, thank you, Mimi, I appreciate that. Paul Trapiel, $10 Australian. Thanks, Ezra, for bringing this to light. Well, I'm very upset to bring it to light. I find it deeply troubling. And if we had a foreign minister that wasn't equally in love with China as Dan Andrews, he might summon the Australian High Commissioner and say, what is going on in your country? That's what I would do. Well, I find that very troubling. And maybe I'm wrong about America. Maybe they are too passive. It's hard to stay vigilant. It takes work. It's easy to go along with the crowd. Nevada allows casinos to operate at 50% capacity. And do I even have to say why? Because casinos are a very powerful lobby. They're an important industry for sure. And, I don't know, every once in a while you get a whiff that maybe there's the odd bribe paid by the otherwise completely honest casino owners. Maybe they give a few favors to the odd politician. I don't know. Probably just a false rumor. Yeah, so you think the casinos are going to let themselves stay closed? They would do whatever it takes to open back up. However, unlike the casino moguls, the billionaires, churches don't have that power. And so bizarrely, the governor of Nevada has banned church services, but permitted casinos. And you know, one of my favorite satirical sites called the Babylon Bee, they had this funny tweet the other day saying, pastor holds church service in casino to open up. And oh, Babylon Bee, you're so funny. Yeah, it came true. Take a look at this. Here's Ralph Reed holding a church service in a casino. Take a look. Isn't that crazy? I think that was Ralph Reed's group. And of course, Walmart's never shut down. You think Walmart, one of the largest companies in America, one of the richest companies in America, probably has more lobbyists afoot, even at the state and municipal level, than even Google or Facebook does. You think they would be shut? They weren't shut down for one day. They were not shut down for a single day. How many people fit into a Walmart, do you think, customer-wise? Hundreds? Maybe even 1,000? You think Walmart would let itself be pushed around? They're not some little church. They're Walmart. And so, I'm not sure which state this is from, but they held a church service in a Walmart. Take a look at this. You know what? I mean, I'm from Canada. We don't have that same tradition of singing black churches. I'm sure there are some in Canada that I just don't know about, but they're not as ubiquitous as they are in the U.S., especially in the South. It looks so, those church services with the, and Kanye has really tapped into that with his last album, which I really enjoyed. And you would be amazed at how many of the best pop singers come from that church choir background. Did Whitney Houston come from the choir? I don't know. Like literally the best singers in America come from these church choirs. I would go to that. I don't know do you know where that video was from? I would go to that. I'm not even Christian. I would go to that Walmart just to enjoy that experience of camaraderie, of peace and harmony and hope. And you don't think in these stressful times people need a little bit of message of solidarity and and goodness and faith, and things will get better, and what's that word? Hope. I would go to that Walmart just to go to that church. And I'd do a little bit of shopping while I was there. I'm sort of jealous about that. I don't think they've opened up churches in Canada, have they? I wouldn't know. Am I caught up on the Super Chats? Let me take a look. I think I am. All right, well, it's 12:40. I see here Menzies Comedy Show. I haven't seen that video yet. What's that about? Okay, let's take a look at that. David Menzies has been doing outstanding work these last few months. I mean, does good work all the time, but he really has been, I think, Canada's most effective journalist in covering all aspects of the pandemic. And just like church is a good salve or antidote to the pains and stresses and anxiety of the pandemic, and more importantly, the government's overreaction and misreaction to it, I think comedy clubs actually have a social function too. They're socializing and camaraderie and blowing off steam. But of course, was it Orwell or was it Solzhenitsyn who said every joke is a little revolution? Do you know who said that? Every joke is a tiny revolution. That's Orwell. Every joke is a little revolution, tiny revolution. I think Solzhenitsyn probably said something similar. Because we use jokes to mock the powerful and to expose contradictions. I think the essence of so much comedy is to show the contradictions, right? That's why powerful people don't really like jokes, because they're usually the ones whose hypocrisies are exposed thereby. If you doubt me, look at Saturday Night Live. There's nothing more. They're so political, they're not funny anymore. But of course they're political, and of course they mock. They never really mocked Obama because they were afraid of being called racist. But they mocked Donald Trump. So when you shut down the comedy clubs, you're shutting off a source of dissident opinion. I won't go into a big tangent about the role of the court jester, a specially protected position in the English court, whose specific job it was and legal protection was to mock the king. He was really the only one who dared to do so under the guise of, it's just a joke, Your Highness. But the role of the court fool or the court jester was specifically to say things to the boss that no one else had the courage to say, because he would say it with a laugh and a smile, and everyone would say, oh, it's just the court jester. But the king needed to hear things. The king needed to hear things. So they shut down the comedy clubs. Now, I have not yet seen this video, because I understand they've been doing comedy in the park. I haven't seen this video yet, so let's watch it together. This is by David Menzies.
Very obvious where I'm from, right? But sometimes I meet people and they ask me where I'm from, and just to with them I go, Norway. And most Canadians are so polite, they just go, yeah, bud, what's Norway like? I don't know.
Wow, man, what a turnout. There's hardly any room on the hill here. Here's the big question. Are you going to force the hand of bylaw? Are they going to ride their little bicycles down here and start handing out tickets, or what do you expect to happen?
I doubt it. I don't think they're coming. I think they're afraid of being made fun of again. And
Wait a minute, a bylaw officer named Officer Coward is afraid?
I guarantee you that he doesn't have a great home life, but the reality is that we've been putting the show on. People want to see comedy. They want to laugh. They want to have a good time. They want to do something, and I think this gives people a really great outlet. And comedy is like the basketball or soccer of art, in the sense that all you need is a mic and a speaker, and you can do it anywhere. All you need for basketball is shoes and basketball and a net. So,
Ben, what feedback are you getting from members of the audience? I mean, certainly the price is right. It's a free concert. They're seeing professional comedians like yourself and your colleagues. Are they just grateful to have a diversion while so many other things remain locked down?
they do, and a lot of them do donate to either the GoFundMe or they come up after and put some cash in the bucket that we basically hand out. But people are ready to just get back to normal, and I feel like this gives them a real sense that things are going in that direction when you're able to make fun of the state that we're in.
And then I checked the profile. I was like, proud shemale from Scarborough. I was like, ew, Scarborough?
Well, folks, as the sun continues to set, the laughs keep ramping up. We're into about an hour of this 2-hour show tonight. No sign whatsoever of bylaw or law enforcement classic. Although I got to tell you, if they did come by and put a damper on this night of frivolity for 500 or 600 people out on the hill, I would like to see what would ensue if that were to be the case. Because methinks that would be my favorite kind of comedy to unfold. Unintentional humor with the riot that would ensue. For Rebel News, I'm David the Menzoid Menzies.
What a great report. I had not seen that until right now. I like that Bankus fella. I like the way he talks. Severely normal guy. Exactly right. They were alluding to bylaw officers and a GoFundMe. I think this is our second video about Bankus, am I right? The first one, in fact, do you want to tee up the first one? I wouldn't mind showing that to our people too. I think he got a $2,000 fine, which is outrageous, and frankly, I wish he would have fought it rather than pay it, but I think we might have offered him our legal assistance, but I think he already had things in hand by the time we heard about it. Imagine trying to shut that down. I like the fact that he wasn't easily cowed. So yeah, they had they were fined. He had to GoFundMe. I think they made fun of the bylaw officers, and they haven't come back since. Toronto's about the same size as Melbourne, Australia. Toronto has had a form of lockdown. Certainly nothing as insane as Melbourne. You can't keep people clammed up like prisoners in their own house. You can't. It will not work. It will not work. I don't know what will break first. Will the police and Australian Defence Force, will they say, sorry, we're not doing this anymore? Or will the politicians blink? Will there be some emergency civil rights injunction granted? I doubt it. Or will the public just say no? And I mean, I think the rebellion might start in the more excitable parts of town that weren't really following the law to begin with, like criminal law. What I sensed there in the comments and the visuals were that Torontonians were sort of sick of living like we're all going to die. And for those of you who watch my nightly show, you know the stats I'm about to tell you. Back at the beginning of the pandemic, Justin Trudeau's official models, their sort of predictions, if we have these certain variables, how many people are going to die. His models range from 50,000 dead to 350,000 dead, which would indeed be a huge death toll. The number, I think, is about 8,900. So a fraction of the best case scenario and nowhere near the worst case scenario. In case you're wondering, the annual death toll from the flu and pneumonia in Canada is between 6,500 and 9,000. So it's pretty much the same as an annual flu season. Thank God it's not the 50 to 350,000 dead that Trudeau's model suggested. But I think people are sick of pretending. Now I know there's people who make a good living pretending. If you're a public health officer, if you're Amazon, you're doing great during this time. But I think the people we saw there are severely normal, and they're sort of sick of pretending. Do we have that first comedy video on deck? So let me show you. So that was part 2. I want to show you the first video we did that deals with more the censorship that this comedy night faced. And I tell you, it's good to see someone in comedy actually poke fun at the government. And I don't mean Trump. There's nothing lamer than the CBC government comedians at this hour's 22 minutes who are not permitted to make fun of Justin Trudeau, so they make fun of Donald Trump, but they're always late and they're always lame and they so badly want to be noticed by Americans. You're in Canada, mate. You're comedians, so you say. You should make fun of our politicians, but they don't dare because they're on the government payroll. A government comedian is about as sensible as a government punk rock band. It's sort of an oxymoron. Anyways, let me know when we got that. Oh, we do. Okay, here's the first video. Let's take a look.
Bankus, he's a professional stand-up comedian in Toronto, and I'm at Christy Pitts. And here's the story, folks. It seems that if you get together in a bit of a group to take in comedy, the state will come down on you severely. However, if you're marching as a member of the demonstration du jour is Black Lives Matter, well, you're immune from law enforcement. Just wait till you hear Ben's story. Okay, well, Ben, I'm with you here in Christy Pitts. This is normally where the baseball Toronto Maple Leafs play, and so that's a park that's used to congregations of many people. And Christy Pitts riots, yeah, that's a part of Toronto history. And you have been engaged in doing stand-up comedy here, but it looks like that is not going to continue. At one of your recent concerts, Bylaw paid a visit, and then what happened?
Well, we've been doing it for 8 weeks. The second week, Bylaw did visit us. We got a little bit of a fine. They left us alone for the most part, but they did give us a fine for a couple grand. So that wasn't cool. But since then, they've left us alone. They came 2 weeks ago to a show. We don't do it in the same location, but they came 2 weeks ago and didn't fine us. A couple cops came and checked it out. They didn't do anything. The last show, we had some bike cops bike past the hill, but they also didn't do anything. So it's, as much as they gave us a hard time that one time, they've kind of left us alone, so we've been grateful for that. Everybody was social distanced on the hill, and we provided garbage bags and sanitizer to make sure that the community was being cleaned up and that we're not doing something incorrectly necessarily. People enjoyed themselves. They were happy to be here, and I think the law enforcement knew that, and they've kind of left us alone because it is such a happy, positive event where people from all different backgrounds are making jokes about each other and themselves and the audience, and everybody gets along. So.
Well, I find this fascinating. You say that people were socially distancing, so I guess they were sitting 2 meters apart from one another. And you're outdoors, so the air is circulating. 150 people in an outdoor park, that's wrong in the eyes of these bylaw officers, yet we could drive a few clicks to a local Walmart, and I'm sure there's 150 people at least in an enclosed facility. I don't get it. Can you connect these dots for me?
No, well, I think, it's a bit of a surprise for the law enforcement to see a comedy show. It's something new for them to deal with. But I think one of the bigger stories is that, one of the shows we had, not at this location, we had two people who identified as being members of CBC Comedy come to the show.
See, now, is that the punchline, CBC Comedy?
Pretty much. I mean, there's definitely a bit of a war on comedy I see. I see with CBC, CTV, the types of comics they put on. Not that they're all bad, but I don't think it's anybody who's doing anything a little bit risque, a little bit dangerous, and I think that's what crowds really want to see. That's what crowds react to, and they want to laugh at, taboos. I think they come by and check out the show. They have a few laughs. They see that everybody's having a good time, is socially distanced, is being very peaceful, and they leave.
So this was obviously beyond humiliating for the bylaw officers. The muscle that they called in instead hung around and enjoyed the show, Ben. Now, the only, bittersweet taste to this story is the fact that Here you are with a $2,000 worth of fines bill. Can you tell us what you're doing about that? Are you going to fight it in court? Are you going to crowdfund to raise money to pay the bill? Because that's a significant amount of change for a stand-up comedian. $2,000.
I think we've raised almost $3,000, and we don't know if we're going to pay it or not yet. We're waiting till the courts even open up, and we're going to see if we can get in a queue and fight the ticket.
I would fight that ticket, Ben. I think the vast majority of these tickets are going to get thrown out of court. Exit question. The days of the comedy concerts at Christie Pitts are over, but I understand this Friday you are resuming the outdoor comedy club shtick, and it's going to be, I mean, have you revealed where the facility is yet, or how could people in the Toronto area go attend your outdoor comedy club?
For sure. So we do it as a secret event. It's kind of close by to this location, but we do it as a secret event. You can go to @BenBankus on Instagram, send me a direct message with your email, and I'll just simply tell you the address and the location. And it's gonna be a really great show.
Can you imagine? You can smoke marijuana out openly in the streets of Toronto. I bet you got to do a wink, wink, nudge, nudge secret notification for a comedy show. And one final thing, Ben, it should be noted, the reason you're doing this, it's not just to stay sharp and to give Torontonians, a couple of hours of escape from these troubled times we live in, but you are trying to send a message to the provincial government to, hey, open up the comedy clubs so you can get back to a proper venue and entertain people, correct?
For sure. We started doing it as a protest, so it is called the Freedom of Comedy Protest, and we're doing it in the hopes to open up all comedy venues, clubs, shows for all comics to be able to perform. And we also stand for comedians having the right to perform uncensored, unfiltered stand-up comedy and not necessarily be held to some standard of political correctness that I think takes away from humor big time.
What a concept, and I can almost hear our audience cheering as you say those very words. Ben, thank you so much for making time for us, and if I can make it, I'll come out to the Friday show, and hopefully I can get my mind off the ongoing madness that is the year 2020.
We'll have a couple good ones for you.
Okay. Thanks so much, Ben.
Cheers. Thanks, man.
I like that guy, don't you? Not just the fact that he's a doer. I like the fact that he was smoking a cigarette while doing the interview. I like that. I like the fact, I like what he has to say about comedy, taking on taboos, not being politically correct. I'm not 100% sure if I understood what he was saying about CBC and CTV, but I think he was saying they don't like really rambunctious comedy. They like safe, vanilla comedy, which of course is government comedy for you. It's like a government punk band. It doesn't really exist. So I think that's excellent. I might have to go and take in one of these shows. I like a laugh. I haven't gone to comedy for years because it's so politically correct. I don't want to hear more Trump jokes. Can I hear something that's actually funny? Listen, I'll listen to a Trump joke if it's funny, but just, oh, he's Hitler. That's, in fact, can you grab my 22 minutes tweets? I don't go to This Hour's 22 Minutes a lot. Like once a week I say, what are those losers up to? And for every time they make a gentle jab at Canada's government, it's like they have to do 10 attacks on Donald Trump. Look at this one. Just click on the 22 minutes tweet. Facebook and Twitter have removed one of Trump's coronavirus posts over misinformation. Next, can they remove Trump? Did you guys hear that? Did you hear the joke I just made? My joke, the joke part was, I said, next, can they remove Trump? Did you see what I just said? Did you see that joke? I just made a joke. That's a real tweet. That is a real tweet. Here's another one. Publishers report Mary Trump has sold more books than The Art of the Deal sold in 29 years. No joke here, just hoping the president sees this. It's a little bit redundant, you guys, to say no joke here. We know there's no joke there. Your government comedians working for Justin Trudeau, there very rarely is a joke, other than you are a joke. It's a joke to think you can be a comedian working for the government. So lame. And I really like Ben Bankus's approach, which is, hey, I got an idea about jokes. Let them be funny. It's a novel concept. It's 12:59. I'm just going to whip through some super chats and then we're done. Jason Peterson, $10. Thank you. Well, thank you, Jason. Copa de Sao, 22 Norwegian kroner. Computer models are computer-assisted nightmares. Well, as I say, garbage in, garbage out. Here's a question for you. These same models, or believe the model, that were so completely wrong, thank goodness, about public health, do you think they're more accurate about climate 100 years from now? Oh, I will predict that 100 years from now, the climate will be really. Jim Trowick, $5. Thanks. Landon Hill, $5. Do you respond to your tips email? I've sent a couple, but have never gotten a reply. You know, sometimes we do. The tips email is read, I can assure you, so I'm sorry if we haven't been more communicative, but I know it's read. Kurt 123, $10. I understand chain of command, but taking orders from Trudeau or Dan Andrews against your own people must strain the discipline of even the most hardened soldier, I hope. David Menzies is awesome. David's just been doing great. And yeah, soldiers have to live within the Constitution. And, you know, I'm not as familiar with a soldier's terms of his mandate. I'm a little more familiar with the various police acts. You can't break the law. You have to follow the law. And it sounded like that Melbourne cop didn't even know what the law was. And it's probably unconstitutional to have warrantless entry into a private home. I bet that's unconstitutional, even in Australia. Fraser McBurney, $12. If you live in Hamilton this Sunday at Bayfront Park, we're having a gathering festival of life, hugs, not masks, 12 noon. Bring the kids, refreshments supplied, it's summertime, let's enjoy it. Well, that sounds interesting. I'm not sure if our reporters will be there, but we do like covering these sorts of things. So thank you for that. All right, well, it's 1:01. We do have a dog video today, curated by our friend Justin. I have not seen the dog video, so let's watch it together. I'll say goodbye now. Until next time, on behalf of all of us here at Rebel World Headquarters to you at home, goodbye, and keep fighting for freedom. That's a great one.